I remember one couple came to me and they shared this story with me. Here was a husband driving home with his wife and son on the way from an event, and he was just wanting to do something to really honor his wife, do something special for her, and he remembered how much she loved ice cream, and specifically ice cream from the Dairy Queen store. So he
My wife too.
Yeah, he said, "Honey, how'd you like to stop at Dairy Queen?" She said, "Oh, that would be wonderful. Let's do that." So they went to Dairy Queen, and what he didn't realize is, again, I believe there are negative supernatural forces that work against people's lives to destroy their marriage, and people don't recognize it, don't realize it, and they walk right into a trap and don't even know it. And that's what happened to this man in Dairy Queen. He walked into Dairy Queen, looked up on the menu with his wife, and he said to her a very innocent statement or comment, "Honey, what would you like to have?" Well, she looked on the menu and she said, "I think I'd like a banana split." He looked up on the menu and replied, "$4.50 for a banana split?" And she replied, "All you ever think about is money. You're totally selfish and greedy."
You know what I've noticed? The all. And then the husband responds, "Well, I thought about it that time, but I normally don't do that." That's what's going on in the husband's mind, but what's going on in the wife's mind has nothing to do with the money.
It didn't have to do with, see, honestly, he thought they were talking about ice cream and how expensive ice cream was. That's what he thought they were talking about. And again, that was the topical issue. But underneath that, what he did not realize is that he just sent his wife a relational message that was very simple. You're not worth $4.50. You're not the price worth.
It's awful when you really hear that.
Sure. Well, if you walked up to any person, man or woman, family member or anyone else, looked them in the eyes and said, "You're not worth $4.50. Well, that would hurt anybody.
Sure.
Anybody would be hurt over that. And what happened was this man did that and didn't realize he had done it. Now, I believe that that was set up in the supernatural realm.
After it was set up, what should he have done to correct it?
Well, what he needed to do was to recognize the relational level of communication. And what I found in marriage, what I found in my own marriage, when I discovered this principle of relational communication, that every time I got in an argument with my wife, we were not talking about what I thought we were talking about. Ice cream or being late.
So if you're not talking about what you thought you were talking about, how do you know what you're talking about?
Here's how you know. You get a clue when your wife gets angry with you, or your husband closes up and withdraws, or your husband is spending more and more time at work and not coming home, not wanting to be with you, and you think, well, he just doesn't love me. No, chances are what's happened is there's a relational message that's been communicated. You're worthless. And what husbands tend to do is close up, and what wives tend to do is criticize. And those two things are pretty consistent with most people. So what do you do about it? Well, when your husband closes up and withdraws, or when your wife criticizes, that is a sure sign that you just sent a relational message, you're worthless. So what did the man in the ice cream store need to do? Well, when he gets a response coming back to an innocent question or an innocent comment, $4.50 for a banana split, which he thought was innocent, and he gets a reply back, "You're selfish. Oh, you don't love me. You don't care about me," in anger, that's a pretty good indication that we're not talking about the price of ice cream. We're not talking about a topical issue. We're talking about a value message that he did not see. This man was just totally taken aback and wondering, why is she having such a response? I mean, why is she flying off the handle in anger about an innocent comment about the price of ice cream? And of course, himself being totally blinded to the area that, or to the fact that there was a relational message of you're worthless taking place, which he needed to deal with. And of course, without dealing with that, just staying on the ice cream level, he can't ever do anything with her to understand her heart. But you know what I think most people don't realize is that there really are supernatural forces in the spirit realm that set people up to fall into these kind of traps without even realizing it, without even recognizing it. People don't understand that there are spirits in the supernatural realm whose purpose it is to destroy marriages and to destroy specific marriages on purpose. And I saw a movie one time about the American Revolution. It was called The Shot Heard Round the World. And the way this movie depicted it is the first shot was not even fired by the Americans or the British, but here were two lines of soldiers facing each other, and the two generals talking in between, and they were making some headway at negotiation. But unbeknownst to anybody, over here in the bushes was an arms dealer who didn't care anything about either side, and he, from the bushes, shot the second in command British officer dead. And when that man fell over dead, of course, the British assumed that it was an American colonist who had shot him. They returned a volley of fire against the colonists, who returned a volley of fire against the British, and the war was on. Now, I don't know if that movie is historically accurate, but I thought that was a good depiction of what happens so many times in people's marriages, like happened to this man in the ice cream store, where really there was a shot fired against his wife that through his mouth. And the reason I say it's like the arms dealer in the bushes firing the shot, because he didn't even know it happened.
Yeah, but let me ask you a question. Should I just roll over and play dead? I mean, should I just avoid every argument possible? Should I just be a wimp?
No, there's no way you can avoid arguments. But you know what? How do you solve that is when you get an angry response from a marriage partner or a husband withdrawing and closing up, you can know that this very thing has happened. There's been a relational message communicated.
Okay, you know it's happened. What do you do?
So what you do is you want to deal on a relational level, not on a topical level. And here's what I noticed. The first step is you want to apologize to your husband or apologize to your wife, not for example, in this case, not for saying, I'm sorry I said ice cream is so expensive. No, that's not the area you want to apologize for. I'm sorry for making you feel like I don't love you, like I don't care about you. Now, I noticed one of the reasons people never do that is because on the topical level, they're right. And see, what I found is it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong about coming home late, about how you spent the money, about...
So in other words, you're saying you apologize for the real problem.
For the real problem, which is not I came home late, not I spent this money, not I did this wrong or I didn't do that or whatever the topic is.
But what happens if the wife or the husband says, well, your apologies are cheap, your action doesn't change?
Yeah, what happens is people will say that when they sense that there's not a sincerity in your heart. Here's what I found happened is that when after 7 years in my marriage, when I had this experience I was sharing earlier in the broadcast today, and I began to understand what I had done to my wife's heart. See, I personally never understood that before. I had always just thought she's irrational. See, she's responding irrationally.
She's got a problem.
And that's what this man in the ice cream store...
But you're saying that you were contributing to the problem unintentionally.
Unintentionally, and that's why I was never able to apologize, is because I didn't even understand what was happening.
Or if you did apologize, it would have been insincere, and she would have picked up on it.
She would have known it, because in reality, I didn't understand what the problem was. But once I understood what I had done to her identity, what I had done in sending her a message, you're worthless. And I began to apologize on that level instead of saying, I'm sorry for coming home late, or I'm sorry for driving too fast.
Let's get to where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Your own marriage.
Yeah.
What did you do? What happened?
I then began to, when this event would take place, and I'd get a reaction coming back at me in anger and criticism, I would recognize, oh, I must have sent her a message, you're worthless. And then I could discover what is that. And I'll tell you what I did is I didn't just do that on my own, but I asked God to show me, what did I do exactly? And as God would show me exactly what it was, then I could apologize and say, I'm sorry for making you feel worthless by doing what I did or saying what I said.
So you actually say, I'm sorry for making you feel worthless.
The actual language I usually use, Sid, was I would say, I'm sorry for making you feel like I don't love you. The truth is, I love you, but I can see, and this is what caused her to understand my sincerity and the genuineness of my heart, is that when I said, I can see that by saying what I said, or by driving the way I did, or by coming home late, or by whatever the topical problem was, by doing that way, that I made you feel like I don't care about you and like you don't mean anything to me.
Okay, by being sincere, by doing that one time, did your marriage change or did it take a while?
You know, it began to change the very first time, because it was the first ray of hope that came to my wife, where she said, he actually understands my heart. He actually understands what the real problem is. For 7 years, she had been trying to explain to me what the problem was, and I had never been able to hear it or understand it. By the way, I have found in talking to a lot of couples, this is not just true for men. A lot of women listening to the broadcast today are saying, I wish my husband could hear this.
And everyone that has that thought right now, everyone that says, I wish my husband could hear this, means you're not listening.
That's
right.
right.
Am I right?
That's right, because what I found is this thing we're talking about does not just go one way. It goes equally from a wife to a husband.
But you were talking about the blame shift.
Yes.
Of if they would only change, my marriage would be heaven on earth. So I'll change and I'll find someone else that's perfect.
Right.
And then, as you said, the statistics are as bad on the second marriage as the first, if not worse.
Well, sure, because everybody's carrying seed with them, and it doesn't really matter what field you plant your seed in, you're going to produce the same crop. And of course, people think the problem's in the field, and in reality, it's in the seed.
Is there hope for every marriage?
I believe there's hope for every single marriage.